Okay, we have 1800 and we are convening a meeting of the Board of Assessment Review, May 30, 2024 at 6 p.m. sharp. We'll begin with a call to order, and the record should reflect that we have all members of the board in attendance, as well as board's counsel and the town manager, as well as the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Wood. I would entertain a motion for the approval of our agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second.
And do we have unanimous agreement on that? We do. Okay. Record will reflect that. We have minutes that have been prepared by Keith. Do I have a motion to
accept.
approve those minutes as written?
So moved.
All in favor? Yes, that's unanimous. We'll move on then to our business for this evening, which is our deliberation on the application of Mr. and Mrs. Wood. We, as I understand it, we do have access to the assessor in case there are any questions arise.
Yes, sir. She's in her office. If you need her, we can make her available.
Okay, if there are questions directed at her, then likewise, there may be questions directed to the applicants as well. Okay, so with that, we will open our deliberations. And I would welcome opening remarks from any of my fellow board members.
I don't believe the applicant met the burden. His arguments did not persuade me that the town assessor did something wrong. She didn't substantially overvalue the property. I don't believe there was unjust discrimination in it. I don't think she did anything illegal or dishonest. If she did, there was never anything that was brought up to that point. And based on that, I don't believe the applicant should prevail.
Which sure did not carry their burden.
Not for me.
Yeah, I prepared some brief thoughts, just going over the three parts of the complaint. I found that Mr. Wood's assertion that the assessor overvalued his home's value by basing it on more expensive units within the cottage preserve seemed to be inaccurate based on the assessor's testimony. The tax bills that he submitted to the board show only an increase of $100 in the assessed value between 2019 and 2024. Given that the cost tables are so low at the current state, as the assessor pointed out, it seemed unlikely that there would be much difference in the assessed building values between the low and the high end cottages as he was concerned, in terms of the issue of home valuations being way off from market value. The assessor noted this and that it's wreaking havoc with her own tax assessments, and that this is an issue that's on the warrant for the June 11th town meeting for voters to approve a statistical revaluation. Lastly, I had that the assessor noted that lot acreage has no bearing on how land is valued in property tax assessments on for a condo property. The $44,000 increase in land value seems to be in line with the infrastructure improvements that have continued over the past 5+ years. If that wasn't the case, I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that that isn't accurate. And then the last issue about the builder's property tax bills, and there being the possibility of a double tax, I felt that the tax bills represented the properties that had yet to be declared out as of April 1st of last year. And so, yeah, I didn't see any indication of double billing.
And likewise, I kind of went through the three different issues as well, with the first issue with kind of the what I understood to be kind of an argument for Mr. Wood that they were inappropriate or inappropriate comps newer to older units. And I did hear from the assessor that the same formula was, was applied across the board. And that the difference, as you pointed out, was very small. And also, Mr. Wood, I didn't see any evidence from Mr. Wood to rebut or show that that was inaccurate or manifestly wrong for the valuation of his property. So I was likewise not convinced of that for that purpose. The second piece with the ratios, I thought this is an interesting issue. I understood Mr. Wood's argument to be that similarly situated properties were being assessed differently, but I think the ratio, kind of conflating ratio with assessment became a little bit confusing. I think ratios, compare sale and assessment and not necessarily assessment alone. So I didn't see that these difference in ratios gave rise to a finding that the actual assessments themselves were manifestly wrong or, discriminately reached in a discriminatory manner. And I also didn't hear anything from Mr. Wood to show what his ratio would be and how that would be impacted either. So I thought the ratio argument was a little of an outlier and was not compelled that it gave rise to a finding that the underlying assessment was manifestly wrong or discriminately imposed. And lastly, with the acreage, I was, condos are unique. They have common elements, which are kind of legally unique holdings of real estate. And I think with that, there are some unique approaches that come with assessing that. And the testimony I heard from the assessor was compelling insofar as, this is a complicated condo. There's been 64 amendments. The town and the assessor has from year to year or from amendment to amendment really tried to apply a formula that is fair across all units, given the nature of the change in the condo. And I heard from the assessor that she looked to other municipalities and the Maine Condominium Act to seek out a formula in assessing these properties. I think that was a way to do it and in a fair and equitable one that was applied to, as I understand it from the assessor's testimony, all the units in the condo. And so again, I don't think there was any discriminatory application or, and I think it was an objectively reasonable formula to use. And I don't think it led to a manifestly wrong assessment. And I also didn't hear an alternative formula that should have been used from Mr. Wood. So like my fellow board members, I agree that the applicant has not carried their burden for this appeal.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to each of you. The chair's conclusions would seem to be perhaps moot in light of your commonality of your thinking on this issue, but I'll offer the following thoughts on it. First of all, I appreciated Mr. Wood's the way he put together his arguments. They were very organized for what is a complicated issue. For me, I initially found the Woods points persuasive with regard to the amenities analysis. And I'll take up part one first, as my fellow board members did. But at bottom though, these were assertions on Mr. Wood's behalf. I think when it comes down to it, we heard testimony from the assessor that she actually did take into account the difference in the amenities. And at bottom, it becomes what I believe to be a truthfully believed and vigorously made assertion as opposed to her testimony that she did in fact recognize and account for the difference in the amenities. Because the burden of proof lies where it does, I don't, ultimately, I was not persuaded on point one. And it is not a dollar of cost of value or value of the amenity for tax valuation ultimately. So I think as I say, what we're faced with ultimately is a good faith assertion as opposed to testimony that took things into account. As far as point two is concerned, I was very uncomfortable that we never had the benefit of any appraisals. I thought that given the hiatus between the first meeting we had in considering the application and our last meeting on May 1, we might have had the benefit of appraisals. And I think that that would have helped the board a lot. And I'm comfortable that we don't have that. I think that the fact that we don't ultimately is, I think that's ultimately deserving to the Woods as the parties with the burden of proof. I think we're faced with a lack of adequate comps, and that's also a thing that makes appraising very difficult, is the lack of adequate comps, and that's what we have. I think the town was faced similarly with that, and that explains the assessor's sort of outreach, looking to other communities and so forth. There is one thing that I did find very troubling though, and that is the significance of the increase in tax as opposed to other properties. Recognizing that we are in that the increases seem to be confined, or at least the largest ones confined to that condominium community. And it didn't pervade throughout the town, but was limited to that community. And I think that that's especially troubling because these are seasonal properties, and the limitations on their use temporally is significant. It's 7 months a year at best. And I didn't hear from the assessor that is part of the variables of the equation. And maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear it. And when I looked at the materials that were attached to our May 1 minutes, I didn't see it anywhere in the report of assessment review or state valuation analysis, or in the provision of the Condominium Act either, that was referenced. So for me, it's difficult to think that a thing, whether it's real property or personal property, can have as much value and be taxed in the same way when its utility is so significantly limited by the ability to use it. And this is really, I think, as I understand it, an absolute inability to use it, because you can't go up there and use the property in the wintertime, period. You're not allowed in. So I thought that was really troubling to me. If that's what obviously they bought into the property knowing those limitations, but nonetheless, that's a different thing than what happens when the property is assessed for its valuation. because of that last point, and I'll just say, I was not persuaded by the third, part three, the third argument. That didn't get any traction with me, but I have been very much struggling with the part two argument and the seasonality component of things. I would be inclined, given that this increase seems only to affect these seasonally limited usage properties, to provide some relief to the woods because of that. But the difficulty I have is how we would measure that, how we could do that with any kind of objectivity. We don't have a yardstick for that unless we are to use something that is akin to the temporal availability of the property for use. And I think that would be too much. So those are my remarks, I think.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, I hope that you would.
We have a number of properties in town that pay taxes as if they were used year round. We have a number of seasonal locations that are only open in the summertime. We have other campgrounds that pay taxes on the full year-round value of the property, even though they're only allowed to use them for less than 8 months. They're only out there for 12 weeks.
Is that elective? Because as far as I know, up here in Maine, we do winter camping. Is this an elective thing to operate just during this period of time? Because that's when most people are going to be wanting to come up and use this kind of commercial facility for.
In this case, I would agree. I mentioned the other places because they all share a commonality that is distinctive with the condominiums. They're all commercial property. All of the comps that we got were residential. And there is a difference between the residential and commercial rates. And to your point, you signed a contract knowing that you could only use it for 8. Originally, it was 6 months. It's now up to 8.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it is a strange thing. You're not allowed to, as I recall, you aren't allowed to rent your units up there. Right? So in that sense, it's peculiar to me that it's.
But I think that's an HOA issue. I'm not sure that was something that the planning board put on there. It may have been something that Joe put on originally. I'm not sure.
Mhm. Well, if anybody here would know that would be you.
Yeah. To my knowledge, no. And do I think that there are units that are rented up there? Probably. There are probably people that do Airbnb or VRBO. I'm not going to chase them down to find out.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just, to broaden the lens a little bit. Taxes are assessed on what just value is, and under law, just value is market value, right? So arguably, all of these factors we're talking about are factored into the market, right? And a willing buyer, willing purchaser, they're buying that. Whether they are aware of those restrictions or not, they think that it's worth that amount. And so that is what the determining factor is when we're talking about sales driven, comparable sales. That's what drives, we never know. And I think that's what assessors would say, is that we never know what's in the mind of the purchaser when they purchase it. It's the purchase price that is the defining factor, right? So I think that to worry too much about restrictions of time and how long you can use them, if a purchaser is going to buy it, notwithstanding those things, it's the purchase price, it's the market value that drives the assessment.
So you'd suggest that the issue of seasonality, that's an ingredient in the soup already?
I-
So it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's already,
I don't want to go too far down the road, but I think that, again, when we're thinking about whether, and any assessment, this assessment, any assessment at all is appropriate, or if it's overvalued, you look at what the sales price is. Comparable sales, to your point, maybe comparable sales will be seasonally limited, other seasonally limited properties, but really, it's all about market value.
other comments and remarks?
I mean, I think that argument, that the sale price does determine the market value makes sense to me, and that's the basis for property tax valuation. And also since, the seasonality wasn't a part of, the Woods' argument, that I wouldn't consider it in our deliberations.
Is the board ready to vote? I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we deny the applicant's request.
Second.
We have a vote and a second. Then
So here, may I make a suggestion before you take your final vote? From a procedural standpoint, so
Mhm.
under the statute, it's required that 7 days from the vote, you have to issue a written decision, which means I'm assuming me, will be drafting up findings and conclusions, which also means that you would have to meet within 7 days to consider those, to finalize them and put them out. I certainly have enough information based on what you said to draft those findings. Whether you take a final vote right now is the factor that will determine how much time we have to reassemble. And so I think, I would suggest, unless you can all meet again here next week at the same time, that we hold off a final vote so that I can just provide you draft findings, conclusions at the next time that we can all meet, and then we can take a final vote then. And you will have those findings in fact, which you can I think, as I said, I think it's pretty clear what you're going to do, but you haven't taken a final vote. You can do so, issue them that day, and then move on, if that works.
that sounds like a sensible suggestion to me, and I would also remark that the Woods would like to keep things moving, and before we get too much into the summertime where things get particularly chaotic, I'd like to see that we get a good day for us to all reconvene.
So will we be
Certainly
looking at only one more time to reconvene, or two?
One,
Just one, okay.
and what I would suggest is, again, I think I have a very clear map of what your deliberations were. We were here. I know what the facts were. I will provide a draft findings and conclusion. Of course, that is, it's yours. You need to review it, make sure that it's okay. But what I'll do is come with computer here, and I can make whatever revisions or amendments that you think are appropriate. Assuming that there isn't going to be a wholesale revision, and of course I'd circulate them beforehand, so you'll have an opportunity to review them. I think we can get this one and done in the next meeting. And even if I have to make some significant amendments, you can authorize the chair to sign as amended, if that makes sense.
Okay.
All right.
So should I pull my motion? Or do we table it, or how do
I
we
think
do
you can
that?
Table it. Yeah, I think you can table that motion. I think it was moved and seconded, right?
It
So-
has been, yes.
Yes,
I think if it's not voted on, it's tabled. I mean, I think that's what we should say, is that you might just say, I move to table my motion.
I move to table my motion. We'll make it official on the record.
Procedurally sensitive.
okay, and we're the second of that, okay. All right, and that's fine, then let's identify a good date. Can we do something as early as next week?
Yep.
Today's Thursday, about Wednesday.
I'm so sorry.
Wednesday.
I
Not
can't do
Wednesdays.
that. I have meetings like every night.
Every night next week?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, it would be the week following.
Yep, I could do the 12th, 13th, not the 10th, but the 11th. I think 11, 12, or 13.
We can't do the 11th or 12th. There's town meeting, isn't there?
Well, yeah, we have voting here on the 11th, town meetings on the 12th. Depending on what time of day, the voting will go until 8 o'clock at night. The town meeting starts at 7, so if you wanted to, say, come in early, we could go into the large conference room and make it open to the public, carry on our business there.
Yeah.
So people can show up and then come to the town meeting.
Yeah. I could do the 12th. 'Cause I'll,
12.
During the day,
Yes.
is that what you're saying? Or
12 works for you?
you know,
Yes,
probably 6 o'clock, just before the town meeting.
You have to do 7 that day?
Yeah.
7, Rich?
We'll be in the middle of town meeting at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock, so that's town meeting, so.
Okay, so
6:45. I teach a spin class on the street until 6:30, so I can come in sweaty at 6:45.
6:45 would work.
Because
Yeah.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
gonna take you an
Right.
exorbitant amount of time, but
okay, we've got to review the minutes, approve, revise, or possibly, or at least edit.
I may have to step out because the town meeting starts, but,
Did we say the 13th is not possible? Oh, okay.
So it's the only day that week is the 12th.
I
And
have
it's,
a question. Thinking out of the box a little bit. We're all local. Can we do a morning before we all go off to work? Would that be acceptable? Because this room I would have to be open, right? Like, is that feasible?
I would not be opposed to that, but I don't have my day calendar with me. Sorry.
well, I'm here 6:30 in the morning if anybody wants to show up.
Wow, okay. If we're gonna do it that early, I'd go for that.
What time do you generally start your appointments? Let's put it that way.
Appointments I can move.
Yeah.
It's just that if I have court,
Oh, yeah, we don't.
no. But we could do 7:30. Or 7.
Mhm.
Sure. Nods all around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
7 o'clock on
Do it
the,
here something.
Why, you wanna get a little extra sleep?
Well, I generally have meetings late at night before, and that's fine. I will be here whenever you need. 7 o'clock, does that work? People want
On
to
the
do
12th,
that?
did we say?
7 o'clock on the 12th, 7 a.m. Yeah.
on the 12th. Okay,
That won't interfere with my 8 o'clock coffee date, so that works.
and Amy doesn't have to come in sweaty.
Yeah, exactly. You're welcome.
7 a.m. on the 12th, correct?
Yes.
Maybe, room will probably be set up just with a lot more chairs than we have now, but essentially the same way.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
So move to adjourn.
Second, Sean?
second.
Can I bring up one other subject matter?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
It's okay. I just wanted to advise you, we can talk about it later, but advise you that we did receive another statement application. Again, for Cape Arundel Cottages. Similar type of situation that we're expressing tonight. So I'll prepare those materials. And then when we meet on the 12th, I'll provide you with the side at a later date if you want to take them.
Very good.
I'm all set.
Good. Thank you. We're adjourned.
My wife won't know how to do this. It's the first time this weekend, I'm on 14:30.
No, I think it's funny. This calendar doesn't even have anything before 8 AM.